I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great orange, in whose symbolic shadow we stand today, signed the Fruit Emancipation Proclamation. This is the orange. Alright. This momentous decree came as a great beacon of light to hopes of millions of apples who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to the end of the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the apple is still not free. 100 years later, the life of the apple is not free. And later, the apple lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of vast shadow of material prosperity. 100 years later, the apple is still languished in the corners of American society and finds themselves in bitter exile. In a sense, we have come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every fruit was to follow heir. This note was a promise to all men, yes, red apples as well as oranges. We would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that fruit has defaulted on the promissory note, insofar as her citizens are concerned. Instead of honoring the sacred obligation, fruit has given the apple's people a bad check. A check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Injustice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. And so we have come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. Go Lakers. We have also come to this hollowed spot to remind fruit of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark, desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial injustice. Now is the time to lift our fruit nation from the quicksands or quick vines of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now it is time to make justice a reality for all God's children. It would be fatal for fruit to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summer of apples, legitimate discontent will not pass until there's not invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. And those who hoped the apple needed to blow off steam will now be content. Will have a rude awakening if nations return to business as usual. And there will be neither rest nor tranquility in fruit until the apple is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But there is something that I must say to my people, who stand on the warm threshold which leads to a palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into a physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy, which has engulfed the apple community, must not lead us to distrust of all orange fruit. For many of our orange brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny. And they have come to realize that our freedom is inextricably bound to their freedom. We cannot walk alone, and as we walk, we must pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking devotees of civil rights, when will we be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the apple is victim of unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of highways and hotels of cities. And we cannot be satisfied as long as the apple's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood, robbed of their dignity, by signs stating 4 oranges only. Only. We cannot be satisfied as long as the apple in Mississippi cannot vote and the apple in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied, but we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you can come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come from fresh, narrow jail cells. And some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by the stars of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi, go back to Alabama, go back to South Carolina, go back to Georgia, go back to Louisiana, go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow the situation can only be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends, and so, even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the fruit dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all fruits are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at a table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a fruit nation where they will not be judged by the color of their peel, color of their peel, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racist, with its governor having his lips dripping in the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little apple boys and apple girls will be able to join hands with little orange boys and orange girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted and every hill mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed of all flesh as it sees it together. This is our hope and this is our faith, that I go back to the south with this faith, and we will be able to hew out the mountain of despair and the stone of hope. With this faith, We will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. And this will be the day when all God's children will be able to sing with a new meaning. My fruit, 'tis thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing, land where my fathers died, land of pilgrims' pride. From mountainside let freedom reign, and if fruit is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California, but not only that, let freedom ring from the Stone Mountain of Georgia, let freedom ring from the Lookout Mountain of Tennessee, let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, when we will all freedom ring, when we will let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up the day when all God's fruit, apples and oranges, bananas and anything, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing, and the words of the old apple spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are set free at last.